So, hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Katie Archambault. I am the current president of AISL. I want to welcome you to our second webinar. This time, we are looking at a product that so many people have expressed interest in. This is Ebsco Discovery Service. We'll be hearing from Max Linsky, who is the regional sales manager in this northeastern region. So he works with K through 12 schools and public libraries. So he's going to give us an overview and answer some of your questions. Welcome, Max.
Thanks, Katie. So thanks, everybody, as well. I don't know who's actually on here, but hi to anybody that I've met before, and nice to meet you guys, albeit virtually, to those that I haven't met. So we're going to talk about Ebsco Discovery Service, as Katie said, which is an option to just make your lives in the library a whole lot easier. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time with the PowerPoint. I've just got a few screenshots and just some general information to set the stage, but I want to actually spend most of our time digging into the product and showing you what it looks like and how it performs, because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So just briefly, what I was hoping to cover in the presentation is to start by just talking in general about the concept of searching and what everyday users' expectations are, and what how the web has formed those expectations, and then taking those thoughts and thinking about what some common approaches are now in libraries, and how libraries are or are not meeting those expectations, and what that's actually doing for your users and for your collection and for your budget. So we'll take that, and then we will go into a brief overview of EDS, and then I'll show you a demo of EDS. So I just saw a chat saying that the audio is going in and out. Is anybody else experiencing that before I get too far into this? All right, so Katie says she can hear well. If anybody else is not hearing it well, can you just type something into the chat box? If I don't hear from you, I'll assume that everybody else is good to go. Okay, so let's keep going then. So ultimately, you've probably heard something about Discovery that piqued your interest and got you to join the presentation. So a lot of the reasons why people are attracted to EDS are probably similar to the reasons that caught your eye. So some of those reasons are looking for ways of increasing usage of library resources. Obviously, I don't think any library would ever say, no, I think our usage is great and I don't want to increase my usage. Or improving return on investment of that budget that you've invested into your collection. All right, so I'm going to pause again here. Stella says she can't hear anything. Katie, do you have any suggestions?
Is my mic live?
I can hear you, yeah.
I don't have any suggestions, but what I was going to say, it may be like an individual connectivity issue. And I would say that the recording will be intact. So if they continue, you might want to just withdraw and count on the recording.
Okay.
Sorry.
Perfect. No problem. So to anybody that's listening to the recording, sorry, we've had a couple of these issues getting going here. So as you're saying, EDS can also help you improve the return on investment that you've made into your collection. Obviously, libraries spend a lot of money building that collection, whether it's print or electronic. And again, I don't think anybody would say no to increasing usage of that collection. Teaching research skills to students is another big thing, especially thinking about students that are coming in as freshmen, probably don't have the best skills in library research. They just expect everything to work the way that Google does. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Google isn't always returning back the best results. And on that note, better preparing students for college. They're going to be faced with some pretty rigorous research requirements when they get to college. And so how do you teach those skills to students who are used to something like Google or Wikipedia? And on that note, finding an alternative to Google. Whether students know the research skills or not, we know that they're all inclined towards using Google because it's fast, it's easy, it's reliable, it's intuitive, and they know that they're going to get something there. And lastly, just making the library easier to use in general. That's going to increase your usage. It's probably going to decrease your costs, and it's going to make the money that you've invested go a lot further. So if any of these are struggles for you, EDS can help. So let's talk about searching in real life and what our expectations are of how search works. So thinking about something like iTunes, you're looking for movies or music, everybody is usually inclined towards some type of search box. Oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. And I'm just going to move this status box out of the way so I can see the whole slide here. So up at the top, you've got a search box there. If you're looking for The Martian or you're looking for Everest or Hotel Transylvania 2, everybody knows that they can just type something into that search box and find something. Same thing with if you're going to Barnes & Noble looking for a book. There's a giant search box plastered right up there that's going to help you find whatever it is that you're looking for. Looking for an iPad or electronics, I've got a search box as well. Same thing with Amazon. And the thing with these search boxes is that they're not just returning back exactly what you're looking for. They're returning back things that maybe you're interested in that you didn't realize you were interested in. So, hey, maybe I'm looking for Star Wars DVD, but at the same time, maybe I'm looking for toys and games. Christmas is coming up. Or maybe I'm looking for decorations, clothing, shoes, jewelry. There's a reason why these sites build their search boxes the way that they do. It's because they want to get you to consume content that you otherwise may not have known about. And libraries are exactly the same way. The resource that a student was going to may not be the best resource. There might be another one out there that they're unaware of, and you want to make them aware of that. So using that and translating that into Ebsco Discovery Service, it's essentially one search box for all of the content that your library has access to. Think of it as Google for your library. So keeping that thought in mind, let's look at some typical approaches in libraries and how libraries are trying to get content into the hands of users. These are real-life library websites that I've grabbed screenshots of, and I've redacted names so that I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. But take a look at this resource list here. We may think that we're doing students a service by giving them all of these links that you see over on the left under general databases, but does a student really know what all Gale resources are or all Ebsco databases or Ebsco ebooks? That can be a pretty overwhelming list of resources to use. And then you see citation and format over on the other side. They've got library catalog. Up at the top, you've got student project guides or general research or new student guide. There's a lot of options here compared with some of the other screenshots that I've shown you. So another example of a library. Where do I go from here? What is the library catalog? What are library databases? These terms don't necessarily mean much to students. And looking at something like this, there's no search box there. So I don't necessarily know how to get into the resources that I'm looking for. Here's another example, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but just trying to drive home that point that libraries don't necessarily do the best job of making their resources more apparent to students of what the right resource is that they want to be using. And so when students see something like this, they get overwhelmed. So ultimately, which option here looks better to you? A big giant list of resources, and I have to click through 5 or 6 different options and maybe perform my search in a few different resources, or one single search box to unify all of that content? I think most people would probably say they'd prefer the search box. So ultimately, the point that I'm trying to make here is that every library has access to a ton of online data that's scholarly, credible, reliable, citable, but most students are still going to prefer the open web. And the reason for that is it's just too many clicks. They've got too many other things going on in their lives to want to sift through a giant list of resources. And so that actually comes with some real life consequences. If you look at this that was pulled from Morton Grove Public Library, it talks about the ups and the downs to using library resources versus websites in the open web. And I think we as people that work in the library industry, we understand all of this, but to students, especially high school students, excuse me, they don't necessarily know these things. They're not coming into schools with the research skills that they need to be able to evaluate one resource versus the other. Their ultimate priority is getting access quickly and easily to some type of content so that they can get back to doing whatever it is, whether it's playing sports, hanging out with their friends, doing anything but schoolwork. And so again, EDS can help with this. So what exactly is Discovery? Discovery takes all of those resources that your library has access to, whether it's databases, whether it's ebooks, music, movies, streaming video, your catalog, your regular print books, and it unifies all of this into one single search box. So I've been talking for a little while here and showing some PowerPoint slides, but I'm actually going to move into a live demo now and show you what EDS can do. So as I'm doing this, might be a good opportunity to take some questions. Katie, have you gotten anything in the chat box, or do you want to open it up to questions before I move into the demo?
Sure. I haven't seen any questions, but do you guys, I'll unmute you, and if you, let's see, oh, unmute all. Okay, everybody has a microphone now. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm good.
No? Okay, maybe wait till the end.
Sure.
Okay. All right, there you go, Matt. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. So this is one possible way that Discovery can look for. Obviously, this is a big, full-blown landing page that we've built here. But EDS can be super subtle. It can be as simple as an unbranded search box embedded into your library website, regardless of what it is that you're using to build your library website. And we can actually help you build those search boxes as part of your subscription. We're not going to throw that weight on you. It's not an additional cost or anything like that. But there's a lot of flexibility with Discovery and what it can do. So this is just one way of many that Discovery can appear. And so going back to the concept of unifying all of your resources into one single search box, something like this looks and feels a lot like Google. And that's done on purpose. We're trying to attract students to these resources. We're trying to make things intuitive and cut down on barriers to access so that students have a gratifying experience doing research. So this can really pull back any type of content that your library has integrated in here. So if I do a search for something like bullying prevention, you're going to notice as I start typing, you've got this autocomplete feature that comes down here. This is also done to mimic Google. And the terms that it's suggesting are based on what other users worldwide that are using EDS are searching for. So there are a couple of huge advantages to this. Number one is the fact that it can help build students' research skills and help them hone their search term. Bullying is obviously a pretty big topic, but maybe you're looking for information on bullying in schools. Maybe you're looking on information for bullying prevention, which is what I'm ultimately going to search for here. But this can help alleviate that workload on students. You'll also see down at the bottom, autocomplete for publications. This is a unique feature to EDS that'll help students locate particular titles. So we're going to come back to that concept in a little bit. But as I start fleshing out this search box, you'll notice that this starts to change and give me suggestions on things that I might want to search for. So I'm going to click on bullying prevention, which is then going to bring me into a results list. And this looks pretty similar to Ebsco Host for anybody that's used to using Ebsco. And there are some big advantages there because Ebsco is one of the majority content providers at the academic level too. So this is a great way of getting students used to resources that they're going to be using once they get to college and get to the university. So a couple of things that I'll point out here. Number one is this topic overview up at the top. This particular one, it doesn't say where it's being pulled from, so I'm going to click into it. Is being pulled from anyway, most of the topic overviews are pulled from either Salem Press or Encyclopedia Britannica. So not only are they reliable, but they're also citable. And this is built purposely to mimic Wikipedia. There's a reason why Wikipedia is so successful. It's because it gives context before it dives into the depth of the entry there. So this is an encyclopedic entry that will also link you out to other related topics as you're scrolling through it. You can see down at the bottom, there's a bibliography of sources. So not only can you go to related items, but you can see what built this topic overview. So I'm going to go back out to the results list here, and we're going to talk more about how records are treated as we're working through this. So ultimately, this is designed to bring context to everything else that you're going to see within this results list. These facets over here on the left-hand side are completely customizable. So some of the things that you'll see there are being able to limit to the sources that are feeding this. So whether it's your library catalog, whether it's strictly peer-reviewed journals. As you come down here, you can limit to specific databases, which I know is a pretty big concern. For some schools, they want to actually build students' awareness of what are the right resources to be using. So this is a great way of diving into that and seeing what some of these popular resources are that are returning back here. But you'll notice that these are coming from a bunch of different sources. So the first two are coming from Masterfile Premier. The next one is coming from Business Source Complete. And as we scroll down here, you'll see Gale sources. You'll see ABC Clio resources, JSTOR, a lot of different resources that schools are subscribing to that otherwise are going to be hosted on a bunch of different platforms. These are also very current. So notice Spring 2017, coming from reliable sources as well. So American Secondary Education, I know, is a pretty reliable source that a lot of schools rely on. Education is another big one. But the other thing is, how many people would have thought to go to, let's say, Business Source Complete to look for information on bullying? Probably not a lot, but using IT design to prevent cyberbullying is probably something that a student would want to take a look at if they're writing a topic on bullying. So EDS can present resources that otherwise students might not have thought to go to. You'll also notice this over here on the side. These are, just to use a little bit of internal jargon, these are, we would call them widgets. They're completely customizable features that can get you to specific resources. If you want to call out, let's say, Google Scholar specifically, or if you want to call out ProQuest historical newspapers specifically, you can do that. Let's say you've got an image collection and you want to have that pulled up so that students can see images related to cyberbullying. These are coming from a speech that Michelle Obama did on preventing cyberbullying. If you want to link over to your catalog, you can build a specific widget for your catalog. You'll also notice the ability to export out to the cloud. This could be Google Drive, this could be Dropbox. I know Dropbox is not a super common one in schools, but depending on what it is that you're using, we can build you the ability to export out. Let's take a look at a couple of other searches here. Maybe you're looking for information on North Korea. You know that that's a big topic in the news these days. Political Science Complete is probably a pretty common resource that somebody might have thought to go to, but who would have thought to go to InfoTrack Junior Edition? This is obviously a pretty relevant result to the topic. Now, if I were to click into one of these results, EDS is matching based on subject headings. So it's not looking for keyword matches. It's looking specifically for results within the subject term. So that's a reliable way of matching to relevant results. It's a definitive description of the contents of that article. A couple other things you'll notice over here are the ability to export out to Google Classroom or export out to Google Drive. A lot of schools are using Google as their primary email. They're doing a lot of things in Google Classroom. They're doing a lot of things in Google Drive, sharing documents. So this is a great way of tying in with what you're using to share resources. You don't necessarily have to store that within your discovery service, which not everybody would think to come back to that. Now, I know probably people are taking a look at that and you're saying, hey, you're spelling it wrong. And I did that on purpose. So spelling is obviously a pretty big issue. I used to be a high school history teacher, and that was something I dealt with a ton, was spelling mistakes. And so students are used to having Google correct their spelling mistakes for them, and EDS is no different here. So you'll notice that even though I typed in Vladimir Putin, it's giving me results for the correct spelling. I do have the ability to override that, but this is another way of meeting students where their expectations are. As we scroll down here, you'll notice this field right here. This looks slightly different from some of the other results that I've been showing you. EDS has the ability to pull in your catalog results. So not only can it search your electronic databases and your ebooks, but it can also search your print books. So this field here will tell you where the item is located. It'll tell you the checkout status. You can even click a link to go over to your catalog and then check that book out. So EDS truly is a single search for everything that the library has to offer. Again, you'll notice this topic overview up here, which will bring context to everything else that we're looking for. You'll also notice that I've been jumping from a bunch of different topics here. I've gone from bullying prevention to North Korean missile threat. I've gone to Vladimir Putin. So we've crossed a lot of different societal, political, social issues. EDS is going to work for whatever topic it is that students are looking for. And again, it's going to pull from all of the resources that your library is accessing, whether it's Academic One file from Gale, whether it's Consumer Health Complete from Ebsco, whether it's ABC Clio, again, whether it's your catalog, whether it's ebooks, and it's going to surface results that students may not have thought to look for before. So Katie, do we want to open it up for questions at all? I don't want to keep talking at people. I know people can tend to zone out if I drone on and on.
I see that people have questions. So I know Katie Voss asked, can you highlight or take notes on articles before sending it to Google Drive? And also, is there a way to export citations to Noodle Tools?
Absolutely. That's a really good question, and I got a little carried away there. I meant to show that. So Noodle Tools specifically, we are working on that functionality. We're hoping to have that by the end of the year, but anybody that's using EasyBib, you can also export there. You can click on Cite right here. You can copy citations if you need to do that. Most of the common formats are there, so APA, Chicago, Harvard. But if you were to export that, here are the options that you have currently. As for highlighting within EDS, we don't have that functionality just because most people prefer different features for doing that, and they've got different tools that they're using that for. So you can definitely export PDFs, you can save them, and then very easily upload those into whatever tool it is that you're doing, which unifies all of your documents into one place instead of having them scattered about in Discovery, in databases, in Google Drive, or wherever else it is that you're keeping them.
Okay. I'm going to open up the microphones. I think Chris has a question as well.
Yeah, sure.
Get it in time.
Right.
So
yeah, I did have a couple of questions.
Come up
so this is Chris. I heard you talking about the exporting to Noodle Tools, and I was curious about that too. So I know the Gale databases will export to Noodle Tools. So if we were to pull up a Gale article through Ebsco Discovery Service, would we still have that feature?
Like just for this search box that we're putting on there with that
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. So there's a little bit of background noise here. And yes, it absolutely would. So if you were to pull up a Gale result, it's going to link you over to the full text on your Gale platform. So any features that are available on Gale would be available for you there.
Got it. Can I ask a couple of other questions?
Absolutely, yeah, as many as you want.
In terms of relevant, like, you're entering in this, you have this one search box for relevance. So I guess this is a weird question. It's going to look across all of those different database platforms and rank them like within each of the different, I mean, it's not going to say like, all right, all of our Ebsco ones are up here at the top, and like now
Yep.
that they use these other ones as well.
No, that's a really good question. So essentially, like, is Ebsco going to bias towards its own content? Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that question comes up every single time I talk about discovery, so I'm glad you mentioned it. And I purposely kept this presentation pretty high level because I didn't know what people's familiarity with discovery was, so I didn't want to dive too deeply into the how discovery works. But since you asked, it's a great topic to bring up. So Ebsco Discovery Service is built as essentially a central index of all of the content that you subscribe to. So we get all of that content directly from either the database providers, in the case of, say, something like Gale or ABC Clio, or we're licensing it directly from publishers. And so we compile that into a giant index, and that essentially manifests itself. Think of it as like a big giant switchboard. So as we're setting discovery up, each switch corresponds to a resource that any library in the world could possibly be subscribing to. So we're going to turn the switches on for the resources that that you're subscribing to. And so discovery is going to look at the data as opposed to where that source is coming from. So if the subject headings in a Gale result are more relevant than in the subject headings in an Ebsco result, then that's going to be what it returns back. So if I go back out here, you're actually going to notice that academic one file is the first result on the list. So that's actually showing a Gale result before it shows an Ebsco result. I can send out some more information on the relevance algorithm and how it's built, but the first and foremost thing that it looks for is subject headings. And that's something that we try to be super, super transparent about, because obviously we're a content provider at the same time that we're a discovery provider. And we want people to know that we're not biasing towards their own content, because otherwise people wouldn't want to provide their own content to us in a search that they're just going to get pushed further down the list.
Can I ask a couple other quick questions while I'm unmuted?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
ProQuest and JSTOR are all integrated as well, like every
JSTOR is. So ProQuest is an interesting one. We do have the ability to link over to your ProQuest content. I had alluded to it earlier in your previous question, where sometimes we'll license content directly from the publisher as opposed to licensing it directly from the aggregator. So in the case of ProQuest, we're providing the vast majority of that content through partnerships directly with the publishers. And that's whenever we are talking with individual schools about discovery, we'll do a content analysis for you to let you know exactly what within your collection is going to be covered and how it's going to be covered. And that's completely free.
Okay.
And there's no obligation there.
Can you still see individual usage statistics for each individual database?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a lot of ways of doing that. EDS is not going to take over your individual usage stats you're running on each of your platforms, but it can also give you a pretty high level overview of which platforms you're using are being surfaced in your discovery results and what people are clicking on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are really good questions. I'm glad you brought those up. Any other questions?
I see Angela said in the chat, she said she has EDS, but still has connectors on the side for those companies that don't license with you. And she's struggling with this because her students are still searching multiple times.
Yep. So it's a pretty broad answer. That's going to vary school by school. I don't know specifically what resources Angela is using to connect to, but we're constantly licensing new or signing new agreements with with providers. So one of the things I always say to people that have had Discovery for a while is it's a good idea on probably like an annual basis to do a health check. And that's something that we can do for you free of charge to eliminate some of those connectors that now might be included in that index. But it's usually a good idea to take those on a case-by-case basis instead of just trying to draw broad conclusions and say, like, here's what we can do across the board. Hopefully that wasn't too vague of an answer for you, Angela.
No, and I have a question as an EDS
Sure.
user as well. So when my kids come in and the default on my library homepage was last year when I first incorporated EDS was the search books and ebooks. And I would have they would search for, say, like To Kill a Mockingbird. They needed our copy from the shelf. And our print books were like buried down in the results list. And we were getting like literary criticism on To Kill a Mockingbird. And it actually, like, it was confusing them more than it was.
Yep.
How can we either set up our interface or is it like you need to set up advanced search features on the interface to say, I just want to search the print collection? Like, what can we do to simplify their experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. And I'm glad you guys are asking these things because these are not things that I was planning on covering, but they're really good questions to be asking. So there are a couple of answers to that. You'll notice in this demo right here, we've got a limiter over here on the side for catalog. For most schools, I'm not, whenever I talk to them about Discovery, I'm not trying to position it as something that's going to replace their catalog. Most students do know what the library catalog is, and they know that it's going to find them a book. The solution that Discovery is providing is it's going to find everything else that the library has access to. And obviously, books are just one thing that the library provides, but it can also include your catalog. So over here, building a limiter specifically for your catalog results is one solution. You had mentioned that your catalog results are getting buried further down on the results list. Mm-hmm. Going back to, I think it was Chris's question about biasing towards results, we do actually have the ability to influence the relevance ranking a little bit to weight catalog results higher or lower. So in your case, I would say you might want to consider weighting your catalog results higher, and that's something that we can do for you. We can play around with that in a live environment where we can change it, make them come up a little bit higher. If you like where they're appearing at that point, we can leave it as is, or we can play around with that a little bit. So basically what it's doing is telling EDS to look more thoroughly for catalog results or look less thoroughly for catalog results.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know if you'll like my solution for this was to just break out EDS to just search our database collection and keep our catalog completely separate, which seemed to work better for my community. But I know other schools who've rolled it all in and they've jumped into the deep end and are thrilled with it. So. Yep,
that's absolutely right. And that's true. You don't have to include your catalog if you don't want to. We've got probably just as many libraries that don't include their catalog as libraries that do. And there are a bunch of different reasons for that. It could be what you're talking about with searchability or the way that your students are used to searching. It could just be a matter of budget too. So that's completely up to you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any more questions? No. Max, was there anything else you wanted to show us before we sign out?
So really the only other thing I wanted to mention is I always think of Discovery as one solution to a big problem, and authentication is the other big piece to that. So it's one thing if you can find all of that content, and this gets back a little bit to what Chris was talking about earlier with getting out to external platforms. It's something else completely to actually be able to authenticate into those systems. So whether you're using EDS or not, we've also got a single sign-on system that will alleviate a lot of these same headaches. It's called Open Athens. And so it integrates really, really well with Discovery to give you a nice unified solution so that after students have found the results that they're looking for, they're nice and seamlessly logged into all of those results. That can tie into existing IDs and passwords that you're using, such as if you're using Google G Suite. So if you want to reuse students' Google IDs and passwords, if you're using Active Directory or LDAP, I know that those sometimes can be too technical for layman's terms, but that usually means a lot to IT. Or if you wanted to, you could just create new IDs and passwords. And so, Angela, it's called Open Athens, just to answer your question in the chat box about what it was called. So that's been a really, really popular solution that libraries have been looking at. We've got a lot of libraries that are using Open Athens and Discovery together because they're two solutions to the same problem. So that was really the only other thing. I knew that people came on here looking for Discovery. If people want to talk a little bit more about Open Athens, I'm happy to do that. If anybody else has questions about Discovery, I'm happy to answer those too. I wanted to just keep it as a pretty general intro, and then we can drill in from there as people have questions, because it can be a pretty broad topic sometimes.
I have a question, Max.
Any other? Yeah.
How do you avoid information overload? Like the Google search, that because all of a sudden they're getting so many more results for their searches. So what do you suggest?
So I attack that in a couple of different ways. So what are your concerns about information overload? Like, what are you worried about students encountering?
Well, I'm just worried. So you did teen pregnancy factors and got 134,500 results. So do they need to, does it change your instruction into keywords? Is it limiters? Is it,
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways that we attack that. I heard somebody say recently that the best place to hide a dead body is on the second page of Google, because nobody ever goes there.
Right.
And Discovery is the same way. So yeah, obviously we've got 135,000 results here, and the likelihood of students going to the second page is slim to none. So going back to what we were talking about with the relevance ranking, that is one of the biggest advantages of EDS that we try to emphasize when we're talking about EDS is how we've built that relevance ranking and the emphasis on making sure that the right results are coming up the first time. So we do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that that results list is reflective of what students are looking for. But we also realize that it's not going to be perfect. So we've introduced a lot of different features to help with that as well, to try to mimic what Google is doing and to try to make things intuitive for students so that they can start to build those skills as well. We talked about the autocomplete as one solution to that. We've also got some features behind the scenes that are mapping terms to make sure that even though a student, one example that I always use a lot is maybe a student is looking for information on tornadoes, and one database calls it tornadoes, another database calls it cyclones, another database calls it vortexes. A student doesn't want to do that search 3 separate times. They want to get one result with all of the information that they're looking for, all of the synonyms. We've got a feature that has actually mapped all of those synonyms to the results that a student is looking for. So the question that I get a lot is, hey, well, this is a service. This isn't actually providing content to us. So why are we paying an annual subscription? That's a good example of the things that we're doing to constantly improve this and make sure that the right results are coming up the first time, so that you don't have to wade through 135,000 results, because you're absolutely right, that can be overwhelming. Does that help?
That does. Something also that our rep, the one that I've met with in the past, has demoed is how you tie into LibGuides. If a search term corresponds to a tag for a LibGuide, I guess.
Yep, there's a lot of flexibility that we have with this results list here. We can build customized carousels in here. We've done it for videos. We've done it for image collections. LibGuides is another one as well, where if you're looking for a particular topic and there's a LibGuide for that. We can actually tie into your LibGuides that have been built there. Those are customized solutions, again, that are completely free. And it's a good conversation to have with the Discovery team about what you're trying to do. There's really a lot that Discovery can do for you beyond just searching for database results.
Okay. Well, those are all of my questions. Do you guys have any more? No? Okay. Max, will you share your, oh, here's more. Stella, do you see it, Max, or do you want me to read it?
I didn't see it. No, sorry.
Okay. It says, concerning the results that come up on the first page, how do you determine the factors and parameters of relevance? In other words,
Sure.
is it based on the opinion of the people on the back end?
So one thing that I always show, it's always better to show than to tell. If you go out and you Google relevance ranking, the first thing that's going to come up is an Ebsco result talking about how we determine relevancy. This is not something that we're trying to keep secret. This is something that we want you to ask about, and we want to have the opportunity to explain this. So these 5 factors right here, this is essentially our formula for relevance ranking. The first and foremost thing that we're looking at is subject headings. The last thing that we're looking at is matching on keywords in the full text. The reason for that is subject headings are a definitive description of what's contained within that article. Keywords can be misleading. Just because an article talks over and over about a particular topic doesn't necessarily mean that it is about that topic. The example that I always use, and this is a random example, but let's say that you do a search for type 2 diabetes. And the first result that comes up is about 20 pages long, and it's about Barack Obama's childhood. And it talks over and over again about Barack Obama's childhood friend who had type 2 diabetes. Obviously, in 20 pages, that term type 2 diabetes is going to come up pretty frequently, but is that article actually about type 2 diabetes? No, it's probably not. If you were looking at subject headings, you'd see that that article was actually probably about presidential biographies, presidential childhood, something like that, as opposed to type 2 diabetes, where if you're searching on keywords and looking at how frequently those are appearing, it could potentially be misleading. So this right here is our relevance formula.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And that's open to anybody to go and take a look at.
Okay. Can you share your contact information in case anyone has follow-up questions?
Absolutely. Let me pull up my last slide here. So actually, it's probably, yeah, I'll leave it on this one. So I work with the states of Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. So if anybody on here is outside of those states, I'm happy to point you in the right direction. For anybody that does work in those states, I'm fairly new to this particular position. I've been with Ebsco for about 7 years. So some of you might know the name Chantel Remy. She is my partner. We work with all the same libraries. So if any of you have ever spoken with her before and you're wondering like, hey, who is this guy? Just know that we're working with all the same libraries. So feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to her, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, great. Max, thank you so much for your time. And we'll be in touch if we have follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody else, for hanging around and taking a look.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, assuming everybody's from the US that's tuning in. All right, bye.